Hey guys, this is Elliot again, and today I'm with Mary Foster with the Children's Park of Tyler and formerly of Goodman Museum. How are you doing, Mary?
I'm good. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too, from a long distance with everything going on. So how
Right.
have you been?
Well, I have not been outside I've been outside in my front yard, but I've been home for almost a month now. Thankfully, with my job, I can do it completely online. And so I'm very grateful for that. But I am a social butterfly, and this little butterfly has not been allowed to flutter for a very long time. And so it's very nice to see people on the internet and see you face to face and hear other people's voices instead of the one inside my head.
So
So,
so you can understand why I like doing these interviews. I'm very much so the same way. I'm just like, I need to
yeah.
talk to people.
Yes.
I need to go out and just like I can't go to randomly to a supermarket and no, that sounds creepy, but still.
Yeah.
Our
I've
conversation.
warned people that as soon as they say I can actually be close to people, I'm going to hug so many people. And like, just wash your hands afterwards, but I'm going to hug people as long as you give me permission because I miss people so much. I need that closeness, I need that community. Um, it's been hard.
It
Um,
has. It,
but
it definitely has.
if that means that I'm not going to get my loved ones sick, I'm not doing it.
I completely respect that. I'm doing much the same way. Even people in town, where we're organizing like dinner time dates where we all have Zoom meetings, and it's don't do a potluck. We've learned because then you only have one thing to eat if everybody brings one dish. So yeah. So to dial it back a little bit. Uh, I would like to ask a little bit about like who are you and how did you get here and what's your current job and what caused the bridge to that? Because I remember you were not an online only working person. So
Right.
who are you?
Well, I graduated from UT Tyler in 2013 with a history degree, and I am 100% nerd with a little bit of other things in between. Um, I was so overwhelmingly fortunate in the way that my career went. I was in a panic, didn't know where I was going to go with my life because what are you going to do with a history degree? Um, and I got involved with the Goodman Museum. There's my cat. Sorry.
I'll introduce them.
This is Mitzi. She is the most awful, terrifying kitty in the world. She hates the camera, but she likes being on laps. Uh, she, my train of thought. I started working at the Goodman Museum as the assistant curator, and then within that year, my boss retired, and I applied and I got the job,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, I was not prepared. I was like, oh wait, the boss? What? Are you sure? I mean, I love it, so yes, please. I
Mhm.
I just kind of dove into it. They said, do whatever you want. And that's terrifying.
Right.
But
Given kind of a authority and uh,
freedom.
yeah.
Um, but over the years, I was able to go to different seminars, different trainings. I learned how to write grants. Before I left, we'd actually received a couple grants for the first time for the museum. I was made to, but by the end of it, I was very proud that we actually had created the standard operating procedures and we built up a volunteer program. Those people are still there. Um, really melding together all of those things to where the community could see that the city of Tyler was not letting it go, that we
Mhm.
were building something out of what we had been entrusted with. And the community was starting to get involved. We had so many fun events. Um,
That's actually where Mary and I met. There were several events going on around Goodman Museum, and of course, there's a museum, so of course you go in and say hi,
of course.
and that's where Mary bounced on up because I don't think she knows how to walk normally. She generally has too much energy, so she bounces. And yeah, I was introduced to you. I was introduced to the museum. It was a very, very interesting experience. So you had a lot of fun there, and it sounds like you've really helped develop the museum as a presence, and this is beyond a historical place in Tyler.
It really was. The entire mission was um, making that place have that sense of community and welcoming. And we met during an event, and I was encouraged to bring funds, which whenever you're a nonprofit, that is your bread and butter. And to get right into why I'm here, I saw somebody do an event there at the museum, and it was a murder mystery dinner for a birthday. And my assistant at the time and I looked at each other and we said, we could do that. And I looked at some of the box sets that were available and I was like, I like my own theme better. And so I wrote one and people had a great time. And we were like, well, we spent half of the funds on dinner, but the rest of it went to the museum. There wasn't a whole lot of overhead. This
Right.
is working and people are liking it. And I get to share history beyond, like, I get to talk about the museum. I get to talk about the local restaurants that we used, the caterers. Like, I got to upsell our community while the community was gathering together in a historical place. And we were having a lot of fun, and I got to teach people history. I saw so many people come out of the box, literally. All those years of acting in high school, they came out and flowing, and I still talk to a lot of the people that started coming to those. Actually, the reason why I have my current job as the social media manager at the children's park is because of one of those people. I'm going to go ahead and say her name, Laura Eastburn.
Mhm.
She recommended me, and it has carried so far into so many different avenues of my life. And people start asking, when are you going to do this? Can you do it privately? Can we put this on our schedule? And I'm like, I work at the museum like 6 days a week. I'm kind of busy.
Mhm.
But I had a different opportunity come up, and while I was learning a lot more technical things, that drive and that desire to keep on doing those mystery dinners didn't stop. So whenever I resigned from the Goodman Museum, I also turned in my volunteer application so
Mm.
that I could keep on doing those murder mystery dinners because I was like, I'll do the first one for free, and if you schedule any extras, just $50 and I'll do it. I will write you a thing. And they were like, all right. And we had done some luncheons, corporate events, and I started scattering throughout different avenues with those mystery dinners to the point that I was starting to get calls for businesses that wanted to have this kind of event in-house, or they would ask me, how much are these scripts? How much do you want me to pay you for them? And I'm like, they're not that good. When somebody wants to put a dollar value to something that you just simply enjoy doing, it's very hard. And so I've had to do a lot of business consultations, and I've been looking at freelancing. What is your writing worth? And having to put a dollar value on that of my time, of something that was a hobby and something I was doing for free, I finally started to see that this could be something I do for extra income for my family. And
Mhm.
when I've always said it, when I was working at the museum, I always said, if you do something you love, you're not working. And I loved doing that. And so I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Keep on
And,
going on.
and then COVID happened. So
Right. And I always
Um,
say to people at doing online marketing myself, writers are gold. Most of this world is are stories written by writers. They are the heroes, usually quiet heroes, because it's a very solitary activity at times.
yeah,
Behind the scenes, every movie we've seen, every most of the speeches we've done, there are even over in ExxonMobil. One of the really high ups is his title is speechwriter for the CEO. Like
yeah,
writers are exist absolutely everywhere. Every time you've been inspired, it's because of that. We're natural storytellers.
yeah.
And then you're just like, hey, I want to write murder mystery, and people are like, hey, that's valuable, and you're like, this thing.
Like some of them are so corny, and um,
You mean wonderful?
um, it it's really such an ego booster to tell you to have somebody tell you that they enjoy what came out of your head, and
Yeah.
something that you just had fun doing. It's it's something I never imagined would be a part of what I say I do, or a possible career path. It just kind of it evolved out of necessity, which they always say, like, that's
Hmm.
the best way of that's innovation, is coming
Right.
up with solving a problem. Um, and the problem was the museum needed funds, and we found a way that kind of had fun doing. And it was like a guilty pleasure. I was like, I'm going to make these people dress up in this time period, and they're going to learn this history. And it's like, it was very self-indulgent. One of them was a steampunk murder mystery dinner with Chicago during the exposition. Um, and I got to tell real history about the mayor being killed um, after the World's Fair. Um, that was true. I didn't have to make it up, but I also involved mechanical automatons, otherwise known as giant robots, and
Because you
airship.
can.
Because I can. And people had fun with it. That was the one that people dressed up for the most.
Hmm.
And even though I had to sometimes define what steampunk was, um, and then we did a Bonnie and Clyde theme. We had like we had a gangster one. Like it was the the imagination is endless. And then I can sprinkle in some history, and you've learned something. Mixing entertainment with education is the Goldilocks. If you can make learning fun, people will remember it. And that was my mission, and it works.
You actually hit on something where you said how validating it was that people liked it. I'm also interviewing many different artists, including some of the heads of ETX Creative.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them said that artists tend to be very just liking a post means so very much. Like just liking some of their artwork means so very much. And unless you've really tried it, it is very gratifying for somebody to say, "Hey, I really like this," and you're like, "That." Right? Even as a performer, like at the end of the show, people would be like, "That was a great show." And it's like, I messed this trick up. I didn't
Yeah.
say this line right. I didn't do this right. How could you possibly like it? And they're like, "No, it was a really good show." I'm like, it was probably the worst show that I've done it. Yeah. And it can get in the back of your
Sir,
head.
your showmanship is excellent. That stage presence, got it.
Well, it was what you didn't see was the multiple times that I ended up failing, which is exactly what I tell everybody to do. Like, go out there and fail is not a four-letter F word. Like, you just
Right.
have to go out and suck and keep on sucking until the suck is gone. Like, it's going, yeah, you go
Yeah.
out there and you need to learn. Like, say the first murder mystery was a giant flop, and you said, fine, I'm going to do it again. Like,
There were so many things that we learned from over the years. And one of the most important things that my boss at the time told me to do was do surveys and listen.
yes. I
Listen
always
to
say,
what they say, because if they want to come back and they tell you they're coming back, you better have made that change or had an excuse for, or had at least an explanation for why you didn't. Um,
Surveys are super important. I always tell people there's no such thing as an expert marketer, only expert testers, which is
Ooh,
to say data ends up being everything. So if somebody says, hey, I'm coming back, yes, find out what they liked, what they didn't like, and what you can improve, and then
yeah,
just take the aggregate opinion and say, okay, so let's test this now.
absolutely. That's the only way to go.
Split testing murder mystery dinner parties maybe seem incredibly geeky, but
What?
hey, that's what online marketers like to do. And I think you as a social media manager are starting to find that out yourself.
Yeah, I just completed some smart boosting training. It was finding out how to build audiences with Facebook and how to actually pay attention to what which one of your posts gets the most reactions. And that's not by how many likes, but how many people followed you because of it, how many people shared it. That
Hmm.
meant that they not only liked it, but that they wanted to interact with it and they wanted to share it with their friends. Those are the important collections that you can get. And when I, I think my biggest win was when 18 of the guests to a mystery dinner were all from the same nursing department.
Oh man.
They ganged up and they swarmed.
Oh
And
no.
it was I was like, okay, well, next time I can just do one for y'all because like I the people that kept on coming back and like they would call me, they kept me on task um, by saying, when are those tickets being sold? Have you written it yet? When is this available? When when the people wanting to spend money are the ones pushing you to do your job,
Right.
um,
It's
you're
a very
doing it right.
be
It's
quiet and take my money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and whenever those filtered out into different opportunities, I mean, I use some of those people as my references because they've seen what I do and they know how much energy I can put into something.
As
Um, it's very humbling.
as a final anecdote before I move on, I completely agree. That's exactly what happened. Like I did a lot of performing, which you saw, which is what I was doing when we met. And from that, like people were saying, "Hey, I want to do this business," and I'd be like, "Well, do this and this and this," because I'm used to knowing how people act. Performance is all sociology and psychology, guys. Just so you know, the tricks are almost secondary. Yeah, yeah, go
Yeah.
figure. Um, so I would tell them, I'll make this and this and this, and they do it, and it boosts them. And then before I knew it, I had people coming to me and being like, "Hey, so I was thinking about starting a new project. What is?" And I just love people's projects. I love getting in on it. And I'm just like, well, if I'm not performing anymore, and so it's the same thing. I was pushed in the direction I went for very much so the same thing.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the puzzle of it all. So now you're doing social media management for the children's park,
Yes.
and then the COVID hit.
Yeah.
So how did you got into the children's park, and I'm sure it was bustling with activity, and then
Well, they wanted to build their presence because every year they are a part of the East Texas Giving Day fundraising event, and that's where they get a lot of their annual funds, and that's happening this month. So be prepared; you're going to see a lot of stuff about it. But this year they have
unself plug.
right. Oh no, I'm going deep. This is my opportunity. This is my job. Um, they want to do something so amazing. They have an opportunity to purchase the property next to them to build a center for counseling and supporting children who are dealing with grief and the loss of a sibling. That
Um,
is so near and dear to my heart. And the fact that I get to work for an organization that wants to bring to the forefront healing and mental health and conversation about some of the things that you don't get to talk about with somebody you don't know that well. And I'm pulling that via social media of going, talk to us. We want to hear your pain. Because so many times, what do we say? Hey, how are you doing? I'm fine.
Right. It's
But
the
if
automatic response.
right, if you ask people again and you wait and you let them know that you have and you will make the time to know how they're really doing, you're going to learn so much more about that person because you actually asked.
With my best friend, I'll be like, "Hey, James," because his name is James.
Yes.
Be like, hey, James," and he's like, "Hi, hey, how are you?" And he goes, and then we'll launch into a story because we've learned with each other, just like, well, when I ask, "How are you?" it's a real question,
Yeah.
like not just like, "Hey, I'm acknowledging you and acknowledging you again." Like it's not supposed to be redundant. It's just like, "Hey, so how have you been? How are you?"
Yeah. What is
That's
your mental state of mind? And
exactly
that's what the children's park does. If you haven't been in the children's park, they have the names of children who have passed away via miscarriage, infant death, like the stories of the children in there. There is so much unresolved grief and so many things that have gone unsaid within this community that they want to discuss it so that those people can come back to the community with a little bit of joy, knowing that they're not alone and that there are people that understand. I went to my very first support group there whenever I started working there, and I was able to say things that I
hmm
just didn't want to burden other people with because they wouldn't be able to understand or react in a totally sympathetic way. These people
right.
got it. And that's what support groups are for. I avoided them at all costs because I'm like, nah, I'm not going to burden other people with my problems. These people are experiencing the same thing. They're going through the same stages. Um, and I am so excited to promote that. The social media, it you would think that it would be so hard um, to promote something like that, but it's all about healing and talking and building that community. And that's 100% what I am all about.
Yep.
And so when I'm looking for pictures, we have millions of pictures. And I'm so grateful for that because content is important. Um, but just showing those pictures of people involved and going, these are your people that live and breathe and work whenever we can again, go to the grocery store. These are your people, and there are ways to reach out.
What I used to do as a teenager, because I was a little, I marched to the beat of my own drummer, is at times I would go up to somebody's house and I'd knock on it and they'd say, "Hey," and then I'd have like a peace offering or a gift basket and be like, "Hey, you're an entire person who's had an entire life story that I don't know anything about. So I just kind of want to hear it." And then I'd sit down, and sometimes it went over well. Other times they're like, I don't feel comfortable. I'm just like, totally get that too.
Yeah,
Understand. Maybe another time in either case. And then I chat with people.
yeah.
They do have all these things. And if we stay in our own insular groups, then we're never going to meet. That's why I got into performing. I wanted to know what everybody was doing. So even at the end, they're like, "Hey, your show is great." I'm just like, yeah, that's great. So who are you? And I just want to
Yeah,
know.
and
Especially now with Tyler Near now with all these different small businesses, each small business has its own story in front of it, and especially with coronavirus being as widespread and becoming more prolific by the day,
yeah,
um, to use that word, what's happening is that behind every small business is a family, to quote another interview. And that means that every single person it doesn't affect one, it affects everybody. It means that all these people, everybody, myself included, have some underlying level of stress that wasn't necessarily there before. You don't get into small business to have a stress-free life,
No.
but you'd still want to have some level of stability. That's what we're going for. So when you don't have that, when you're worried about, oh, what am I going to do today? What am I going to do in 6 months? What am I going to do in 4 months? I have this timeline to make things happen. That's really where everybody has to pull together and say, okay, it's not any one of us. How can we, in aggregate, make things happen?
Exactly. And Tyler specifically, there are so many small businesses, so many entrepreneurs, so many people who are able and taking those chances to live to the beat of their own drum. It
Yeah.
is, and I loved, that's something that I really enjoyed about like the Artisan Flower Market or Celtic Fest, seeing all of those people coming out of the woodwork and they're like, oh, yeah, I've got a few paintings around, or yeah, I do carvings. And they might be an engineer or an accountant, or they're working for the newspaper. And then they bring in all of these, just a myriad of skills and creativity and passion for what they're doing. And that is what is so inspiring about Tyler, and why I'm so excited about doing this, because highlighting those small business people that yes, every single one of them has their own levels of stress just on the day to day, not even talking about what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
having that continued passion, like right now, it's hard. It's really hard. But I told my boss, and I'll tell everybody, this is your moment to grow. This is your moment to sit down and perfect your craft, rewrite your business plan, learn a new skill. If you've been procrastinating, learning QuickBooks or SEOs or Facebook, or just getting familiar with the digital aspect of your business, do that now, because you can do that on your couch. You can do that with your phone. Like, this is your time to do it. Your kid's supposed to be doing his homework anyways. Um,
Right.
but but this isn't, I had to change my mindset from going, I'm just gonna clean house and sit and play Minecraft. No, I have to do something that whenever this is all over, I've grown. I've done something that is going to push me forward to where I'm going to come out better than I was before. Because otherwise, I'm going to just
Right.
implode, and I can't do that.
Everybody's so very used to, I mean, there's always the phrase working in the business versus working on the business. And a lot
Yes.
of people don't know how to make make that distance or create that distance
Yeah.
between the two. And now's the time. I'm actually going to be start posting things like that they can do for like their Google My Business to just optimize that and stuff. Because a lot of it, like especially in the online marketing world, as I'm sure you're finding out, a lot of it is black box. Like nobody knows exactly what's going on, and I've never agreed with that. If anything, I'd like to say it's actually a lot of work, and here's all the work that needs to be done. And then people say, well, can I just pay you to do it? And you're like, yes, you can. But I'd
Well,
rather be honest and upfront and
yeah,
say, this is what happens. And so I'll teach everybody anything all the time because it
yeah.
lets me geek out about SEO, which is a puzzle. But yeah,
I mean, that's something that I I never considered myself tech savvy. I used to say that I have an allergy with technology. It tends to break around me. But the more that I've learned about it, the more I can appreciate how much I can put into it and what it can give me in return. Learning
right.
about the back end of how things work and doing it properly. I just started, because you recommended it, I went on to Weebly, and it was like, well, do you want to attach a Square account? And I'm like, sure, because I mean, I want to make sure that they can give me money. Um,
Right.
and I've actually had to research different payment gateways. I haven't looked into Square that much, but I've seen so many people using it. I'm like, that's user friendly. And I've learned about integrations and learning the inner workings of what makes that streamline between when the person clicks on your website to where you're getting something in return and how they found you. It's so much more involved, and it is because there's a lot of time and energy put into creating those products where people can find you, where your name is popping up when it needs to. Those tags, the reference points, the topics, like you've got to be part of those search engines. You've got to be putting your name out there. But the biggest, like one of the biggest things is you have to be present on social media. You have to be active. It's not enough to just put it up there. You have to be interacting.
Right. That's another thing I want to do with Tyler Near Now. There are a lot of different groups where people just post business cards or special offers, and I want to have a way where people can blast it to other business owners. Be like, hey, there's an event and they're looking for vendors.
Yeah.
Bam, you can do that. Like opportunities to make money, opportunities to be involved, opportunities to build out word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I'm happy having you on again, but I'm going to have to start winding this down a little bit.
Did
So,
we answer any of the questions?
some. For everybody watching, I have a list of questions, and occasionally I'm just like, yeah, that's close enough to that one. But as has been shown the day that I met Mary, she and I can just chat and geek out for hours on end, even when our significant others are like, and they're not even wearing watches. They're just
what
being
is time?
yeah, time is a concept.
Right.
So what is some kind of advice that you can give? I know you just said it about with social media that you have to be on it and you have to be involved in it. It's not something you can just put set and forget. So we didn't really get into like how COVID is affecting the children's parks, but before April, so like I said, we'll do with this another interview. What advice would you have that only you, Mary Foster, can give that other people wouldn't?
So I struggle with this. So I'm telling myself while I'm telling you, if you don't understand something, ask your friends, ask the experts. Don't just Google it. You have local resources and they can tell you what works and what doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
It can save you hours. It can save you money. Ask the people around you. That's what Tyler Near Now is going to be. It's going to be that resource where you have that local collaboration, and it's going to be such a powerhouse of knowledge of what works and best practices. Get on it. Start asking questions.
Awesome. I agree. Any problem you've had, other people have had many times before. And I'm very much so share everything. So I'm going to wind things down here. So thank you, Mary, again for coming on. It was a pleasure chatting. And I think that there's a lot more to talk about here.
I'm always doing too much stuff.
I know. It can be hard to get a hold of you from time to time. It's just like, hey, you want to hang out? And then it takes 3 days to, yeah. So anyway, I'll chat with you soon, and thank you very much.
Thank
Bye,
you.
man.
Bye.